All right, everybody, I think we're ready to get started here. Thank you for joining the National Fish and Wildlife Acres for America grantee webinar. My name is Chris West. I'm the director of the Rocky Mountain Regional Office for the Foundation and the program director for Acres for America. Today I'm being joined by Kimberly Schreiner and John Wright, who are program coordinators with National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and they'll be helping out through the presentation. Just a couple of quick things. If you don't already have your phone muted, please mute your phone and do not hit your hold button during the call. If you have a question, please type that in the chat box, which is in the drop-down menu, which should be on the right side of your screen during the webinar. And if you have a problem, please also list that if you're having technical difficulties or something else. Please put that any questions you might have there in the chat box as well. This webinar and the tip sheet will be posted on the NFWF webpage under the Acres for America program page after we're done today. So if you missed anything or you had colleagues who were unable to attend the webinar, they'll be able to get that information there. So really quickly, just a quick introduction to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. We are a 501c3 nonprofit foundation chartered by Congress in 1984 and with a board appointed by the Secretary of the Interior. I think the key thing is what we do is we bring both federal and private funding together and leverage that money to on-the-ground conservation projects through grant-making processes like Acres for America. And the next slide sort of shows a little schematic of how we do that. Really here, the key point being that we're convening and leveraging that funding and putting it back into projects across the country for priority wildlife and habitat conservation work. Specifically, the Acres for America program was launched in 2005 as a partnership between Walmart and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And in the past, over the past decade of the program, and the key goals, sorry about that, slide out of order in my notes. Key goals of the program are to conserve critical habitats for birds, fish, plants, and wildlife, to connect existing protected lands and unify wild places and protect migration routes for wildlife. Thirdly, to provide access for people to enjoy the outdoors, and finally, to ensure the future of local economies that depend on forestry, ranching, and recreational uses of the land. Since 2005, the initial goal was to protect an amount of land equal to Walmart's development footprint within the first 10 years of the program. That development footprint is about approximately 138,000 acres. We've far exceeded that, and as of 2014, through the 2014 grant awards, we've protected more than 900,000 acres through this program, equivalent to the size of Olympic National Park. Those accomplishments have been completed through 60 different projects in 31 states, plus the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, and connected millions of acres on landscape level conservation nationwide. These next two slides, this slide shows the locations of those 60 projects spread across the country, and these next two slides get into the partners. And without the partners, both in terms of the land conservation partners, the land conservation organizations, and state agencies, and that have worked on being BIN grant recipients, and the funding partners, there's no way that this program would have been able to achieve that level of success. So we're going to move quickly into the 2015 funding availability and the 2015 Acres for America grant round. This year we have approximately $1.8 million available, and we anticipate making between 3 and 5 project awards with that funding. So the programmatic focus, this will delve into a little bit more detail here. There are 2 sets of criteria. The first set of criteria for the program are the conservation criteria. And I will read through those because these are important to note. That the successful projects or successful applications will protect or contribute to the protection of significant acres of land and address one or more program priorities, will be a national or state conservation priority, protect critical fish and wildlife species, expand wildlife connectivity, provide a range of ecological services, expand public access to nature, benefit local economies, and ensure the long-term stewardship of the resources on those properties. I think it's important to maybe take a moment here to note that successful applications will meet many or most of these criteria, but certainly not required to meet all of them. We recognize that different properties have different qualities, and that it is not necessary to meet every single criteria to be successful in this program. I'll go back. It's also, I think we can help expand a little bit on the criteria here as well, is that NFWF is looking really for iconic lands, really high visibility, high priority projects, things that can be considered one of the most important acquisitions in either an easement or a fee acquisition in your state for the next few years. So we're really looking for sort of those high visibility, high quality, highly leveraged projects. We're also looking for large properties, and this is a question that we get quite a bit about what is a large property. And I would say in some parts of the country, for example, a place like southern New England, a 1,000 acre property may be easily considered a large property, and something that we would seriously consider. When you're compared to something in the Rocky Mountain West, we'd probably be looking at things that are 5 or 10,000 acres or greater. Just we realize that there are differences across landscapes, but we are looking for those properties that really are the large acquisitions in your specific landscape. The second set of criteria, and I will not read through this one in as much detail because they are also available on the web page and are really related to the real estate transaction itself. So I just want to make sure that all applicants are aware of our acquisition and real estate criteria. So as Kimberly will get into here in a little bit as well, the application process for Acres for America is a two-step process. There are a set of pre-proposals, and those will be with the July 23rd deadline. And those will be then winnowed down to a select group that will be asked for a full proposal due in September 17th. Thank you. And one of the things that's very important to the foundation is the project metrics, and these metrics that are listed here on the page, on this slide, will be required as part of the full proposal. However, we really encourage applicants to include summary information regarding these metrics in your pre-proposal narrative, if at all possible, and that really helps us here best assess each project individually. And like the conservation criteria, we also understand and expect that not every project will cover every metric listed for the program. The program, Acres for America, does have a matching requirement. We require a one-to-one match in the form of cash or in-kind goods and services or donated land value. And I think an important point to stress here is this is Walmart funding, so federal funds may be considered as match. And in fact, we encourage projects that have federal funding and federal support secured. Not only does it show that support for the conservation program itself, but it also, we realize that there are often times when it is very difficult to match federal funds, and the Acres for America funding can provide a key source of matching funds for an organization for a specific project. As I mentioned earlier, this is a two-step process, a pre-proposal and a full proposal. Pre-proposals are due coming up here in about a little less than a month, on July 23rd. Only pre-proposals submitted through National Fish and Wildlife Foundation's Easy Grants programs are considered. Kimberly is about to walk you through the basics of submitting an easy grant application. As I mentioned, a select group of pre-proposals will be invited to submit full proposals. We expect that decision making to be completed by mid-August. There will be a relatively quick turnaround time for full proposals, as the final full proposal deadline is September 17th, and final decisions will be made by NFWF in November. I did want to take just a couple moments to go through some of the 2014 successful application examples. There are 4 listed here. I'll run through them quickly, but just gives each of you on the webinar a little bit of an example of what we've funded in the past, and as a guide towards the type of project that we're interested in funding in 2015. The first is the Powderhorn Ranch in Texas, which is a 17,000 plus acre fee acquisition. This was a state conservation priority for the state of Texas for many years, and protects thousands of acres of freshwater wetlands, salt marshes, tidal flats, and coastal shoreline, and extensive mature live oak forests and several imperiled and endangered species, such as the whooping crane pictured here in the photograph. The second one that we funded last year was the 6,462 acre conservation easement on the Lost Coast Redwood and Salmon, as part of the Lost Coast Redwood and Salmon Initiative. I think the important part of this really highlights the connectivity, which is a key criteria for the foundation in selecting projects. These easements result in blocking up and making contiguous 140,000 acre matrix of protected lands on the edge of California's largest coastal wilderness. Third project here is the Hood Canal Landscape Conservation Initiative in Washington State. This is, again, about a little over 6,000 acres. This is a project that is a combination of fee title acquisition and conservation easements, and the key components of this one were really the safeguarding the habitat and the connectivity for threatened fish species, but also the contribution that this property makes to the rural economy through both working forests and outdoor recreation. So this is a different example of those meeting those criteria, a way projects can meet the different criteria in different ways. Finally, the Coastal Headwaters Forest Longleaf Conservation and Restoration project was our largest in terms of acres at 205,000 acres. This is a large working lands conservation easement project in Alabama and across the state line into Florida. Not only is going to ensure that these lands are protected, but also restored and improved for threatened and endangered species such as the gopher tortoise that's pictured there at the bottom of the screen. That is a quick overview of the criteria and a little bit of the process. And before we go into the easy grants component of this, I see that we've gotten a couple of questions here that I might just jump in and answer. There was one question that came in and says, can we define significant acres? And being a national program, it is really hard for us to define, in 2 or 3 sentences what is significant in say, coastal Maryland, and then also significant in Texas and significant in California. And so I think part of this is comes to the applicants, just for you guys in your pre-proposal narrative and in your supporting materials to demonstrate to us why this is significant based on the criteria that we put out there in terms of wildlife habitat, connectivity, having a working lands component to it, possibly a public recreation component to it. I know that's a little bit of a workaround on the answer, but it's really nearly impossible to put together a national set of criteria that makes sense to different groups. So we really do ask for you to demonstrate to us how that is significant, at least at the statewide or regional level, and how your project fits into that thinking that's going on wherever you may be located. We have a second question here, which is, we are a coalition of land trusts, and together our proposal will be over 1,000 acres, but it will be comprised of multiple acquisition. would this type of application be competitive? In that case, I think probably would need a little bit more detail on where you're located, and at the end of the webinar, we're going to offer my email address and Kimberly's as well, and we'd be happy to talk with any applicant who's got questions, or potential applicant who's got questions about, not only their competitiveness, but also some of the details. Real estate transactions are fascinating, and they are complex, and no two are the same, and we understand that. And we'd be happy to talk with any prospective applicant about their specific project offline, and not get into the details here today on the webinar. So please make sure to reach out to me or Kimberly after the webinar. We'll walk through your specific case. Okay, so here's another question is, given the amount of acres money, the number of acres possible small, do you accept proposals for a phase and a multi-phase acquisition where the completion of the phases will far exceed acres investment? I think we would be open to looking at any type of acquisition plan, and again, I think in a case like that, I really would encourage you to reach out to me directly, and we can talk about what you've got moving forward, and seeing if that is something that's going to be competitive based on not only the structure of the transaction, but where you're located in the country and the resources you're working with. There's another question here that's come in that says, can you give an example of in-kind contribution of goods or services to meet matching requirements? For example, some of this might be if you have legal services that related to that are being donated, or if you're able to secure baseline documentation reports from a state or federal agency. Other thing, just donated goods and services related to the transaction are particularly what we're looking for there. If you have a restoration component, if there's materials that are part of this, but I think that really we're looking at trying to keep those costs to the real estate transaction. And Kimberly, is some of that also listed in those criteria that we post on the website? Correct. In the accompanying tip sheet, there's a whole section discussing budget and matching contributions. Our website, in the applicant assistance part of our website, also has information regarding matching contributions and budget questions. And that will be found in the in the tip sheet associated with Acres for America. So another question has come in. Do you anticipate a particular geographic focus in 2015, either by state or by landscape type? We don't. This program is purposefully a national program without a specific focus. I think it's the only thing I would probably add to that is it's probably not likely that we would make multiple investments in, at least in consecutive years, in the same exact landscape that we've done before. We do try to spread the funding around to different parts of the country, but there is clearly no geographic restrictions or limitations. We really are kind of putting this out to the conservation community to find those projects that really stand out and shine on the national stage. Here's the question: is what's the likelihood of a project to be funded in an area that has previously received funding? I think that it might work against a project if it was to come in and it was in a project that has been funded by Acres, certainly within the last 2 or 3 years. The program has been going on for a decade, so we will be going back to states that have received funding for sure. But I think that's with that one caveat that if an area has received an Acres grant in the last 2 or 3 years, that probably wouldn't work against it. We don't want to say absolutely, but I think it would be something we'd have to take into consideration. But if you have a question about if that is related to your specific project and where it's located, feel free to reach out to Kimberly or I, and we can let you know if there have been previous Acres grants in recent years in your area. There's a question in which it says, how much was awarded for each of your example projects? If your grant awards will be between 300 and 600,000, it would favor easements versus fee title. Each of these fell into that same last year, that those grant awards fell into that. I don't know that we have a preference for fee title over easements. I think that if you look at trying to pull something together for a budget, there may be some places where an easement, just because it costs less per acre in general, might fare a little better, but there's certainly no bias one way or the other in the program for an easement acquisition over a fee title acquisition. If the lands, here's another question that's come in. If the lands targeted for protection are relatively small, but their protection will ensure connectivity of a much larger landscape, would they meet the funding criteria? I'd say they would, but you're going to have to demonstrate that connectivity and how critical that piece, that relatively small acquisition piece, is to the larger pieces, and really would encourage you to work diligently with the owners or managers of those pieces that will be connected, to make sure that they are not only supportive of the project, but are also able to help you make that case that this is an important connection piece. And connectivity, as we stated earlier, is one of the key criteria of this program, and we do take that seriously. The website address is www.nfwf.org. The question came in: will the 2014 awarded pre-proposals be posted for example there? The 2014 grants are listed.
2014 grants are listed, the
Right.
ones that were awarded, correct?
Right.
But the pre-proposals are not privy to the public.
Right, that's not public information. So if you have a question about something else, again, feel free to contact us about specifics about what's going on, or what has gone on in your area. Another follow-on question: can you define an area state next to an awarded project, for instance? I guess we sort of look at things on a statewide basis, would be kind of our first level of looking at things, realizing that there are some regions that contain multiple states and some states that have multiple regions within them. It's I think that for where you're going with that question, it probably is we would look at the actual state that the project was located in, would be the filter we would use for the at least for the immediate location, for the location of considering additional awards, for instance. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, we'll have a little question opportunity at the end here. I want Kimberly Schreiner to be able to get a chance to jump into walking each of you through the getting signed up for easy grants and submitting your proposal.
Thank you, Chris. So for anyone to submit a pre-proposal to NFWF, you will have to go through our easy grant system. And the first thing you would do is log into the system at, sorry, I have to change the screen, at www.nfwf.org/easygrants. Once you get in there, you're going to need to either register for an Easy Grants username, or if you are a returning applicant, just use your prior login. If you have any questions about how to get your login from previous years, the Acres for America pre-proposal tip sheet goes into the specifics of doing that. You can find that tip sheet on the website. After you have established a login and you have entered the system, you will need to then apply for the Acres for America funding. So click on the Apply for Funding button and then select the Acres for America funding opportunity. Click Continue and then Apply. You will be asked to submit an eligibility quiz. It's quick. It shouldn't take you very long at all. And once done, you will be directed to the My Tasks page, where you will click onto the pre-proposal link. Once in there, you will see that there are 4 major sections that will need to be completed for submission. You will find it as contact information, project information, uploads, and matching contributions. Once a section is complete, a green check mark will appear in the validation summary. And then also please note, however, that as soon as you begin an application, the matching contribution section is automatically defaulted to be quote-unquote complete with a green check mark. However, you will still need to go into your section and enter your info. This is just defaulted to complete because varying programs within the NFWF organization have differing matching contributions. So please remember to go back into that section and enter your proper amounts. Another section to pay attention to is the upload section. This is where you will provide your pre-proposal narrative. And to access the pre-proposal template, click on the link to the right, download it to your computer, and once you have written your narrative, you will need to upload it to the EasyGrants system. The review and submit page allows you to see the status of each of your sections, and it will also inform you if there's anything missing. Once you have a green check mark next to all of your sections, your proposal will be ready for viewing. And you can do that through the PDF view button. And then if you like what you see, you can submit it. At any time, let's see, there we go. Okay. At any time during your application process, there are two locations on the screen of EasyGrants where you can click to receive help on the system itself. You can click the button to the left, which is help, or you could email or contact the helpline. However, please note that the phone number is a voicemail system and someone will get back to you shortly regarding that. This is a slide about the Acres for America tip sheet. It's a fabulous document that we have created in addition to all of the EasyGrants help features. It is specific to the Acres for America, and so you can find this on the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation's website, the Acres for America program page. There's also a link right here on this slide to take you there. And this is a document that will guide you step by step through every field of both the pre-application and, should you be invited, the full proposal stage of your application. It's a very useful tool and can be found on the webpage of the NFWF website. So just a couple last-minute tips and information. With the Acres for America program, site proximity to a Walmart store is not in consideration during the review process. And if you've never used EasyGrants before, we encourage you to start today, log in, get a username, and start familiarizing yourself with the system. If you have Internet Explorer, you probably already know this, but pop-up blockers, you'll get a notice every time you enter the system to turn them off. So some systems you can just turn it off once and you're good. Internet Explorer people, you're probably going to have to turn this off over and over again. It is strongly encouraged that you discuss your ideas with fellow conservationists, agencies, and funders, since their support will be critical in the full proposal stage. You are also welcome to contact a regional office director here at the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to discuss your project and potential ideas for the area that you're looking into. You can also contact Chris or myself. Our information will be on the last slide, and if we can't answer it for you, we will direct you to a regional office director that can give you more details and assistance. As expected, probably please check the website frequently for any updates or changes. Not that we're expecting anything to change. It's always good just to be familiar with the web page. And as Chris mentioned before, the pre-proposal deadline is July 23rd, and we'll only be accepting those pre-proposals submitted through the EasyGrants system. And that is going to be July 23rd at 11:59 p.m. Eastern, so pretty much midnight on July 23rd Eastern time is what that date is referring to. Once we receive all the pre-proposals, we will have about a 4-week review period. And then we will invite a select number of appropriate proposals to come in for the full proposal stage. And that deadline for the Full proposals will be September 17th, midnight Eastern Time. Once we receive those, the final funding decisions will be made by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Board of Directors in November. Let's see.
Yeah, so we just would like to say thank you for walking through this with us. I hope that we see lots of great applications this year. Both my email address and Kimberly's are listed on the screen here. We do have some time for some additional questions, and if you have project-specific questions, we really do encourage you to jump on email, or even if we need to, we will get on the phone and walk through your specifics, because we realize that every project is unique and has a unique set of circumstances, and we will work with you to figure out if they're going to be something that really fits with this program or not. There's a question came up, will you allow a map to be provided as a third page in the pre-proposal or as an upload? And the answer to that is yes, Kimberly?
Yes, you are welcome to add a third page to your pre-proposal narrative for it to be most likely a copy and paste of the map image that you would like to present in your pre-proposal narrative. Maps are excellent, just obviously don't go overboard.
Yeah, and a map that would be really helpful would not only clearly show the property to be acquired, but also some of the context of what is in the neighborhood, be it a public lands, private conserved lands, in the immediate area. Let's see, we have any other questions? If a pre-proposal is limited to this is a question here, is a pre-proposal is limited to 2 pages, can or should we submit maps as backup information? So the answer is yes, we do allow for a map page to be added to the narrative as a third page, and we do not want really no other backup information. We really feel that you should be including that information in the narrative and in the application through Easy Grants, through the fields in Easy Grants.
Yeah, and come the full proposal stage, that's where we will require much more documentation, and that is probably where a lot of the things you guys are thinking about will be uploaded. But please be as descriptive as you can in your pre-proposal narrative, and as Chris mentioned, really focus on those metrics that are listed for the application.
And focus on the program's criteria, as those will be really the key components that we're looking at as we pare down the pre-proposals to those we want to invite for full application. So really can't encourage you enough to clearly demonstrate those metrics and demonstrate how this project meets the program's criteria. The question came in, how many pre-proposals are typically submitted on average during each grant cycle? Last year we had between 40 and 50 pre-proposals, and of that we advanced, I think, between 8 and 10 for full proposals. It is our hope that we don't put a lot of people through an arduous process. The full proposal is a lot longer, and more detailed, and we want to respect potential applicants' time and energy as well in this process. So we really hope to pare that down to about 20 to 25% of the applications will be requested for a full proposal. So it is very competitive program nationwide. The question came in, would another foundation 501c3 qualify as an applicant? Can we have joint applicants? Okay, so there's two questions there. The first one is, can you have joint applicants? And the answer to that is yes, although I believe one entity is going to have to be the applicant through the Easy Grants submission, but certainly we could have multiple project participants, and if that's a joint or junior and senior versions of however projects get organized. That we understand that there are about as many ways to organize a conservation project as there are conservation projects out there. And yes, another foundation 501c3 would qualify as an eligible entity under Acres for America. So that's a good question. Thank you for that. Back into the on the website, there are the eligibility of both of entities, and eligibility and ineligibility are highlighted, as are the ineligible uses of grant funds is also laid out in there. So we encourage you to take a look at that. And again, if you have any questions about your specific idea or concept or project or structure, please reach out to us and talk about your particular situation. Okay, another question is coming here. Recognizing regional variation, is there a minimum request that you look for? A minimum request? No. I think that the key thing there is that we're looking to fund 3 to 5 projects with this this year's funding, which is $1.8 million. So, but in terms of a minimum, no, we do not have a minimum kind of threshold for funding. This is another question, if this has not been asked before. Is there a funding organization that would not be included as matching? I don't believe that there is any thing that would be ineligible. As I mentioned, we do encourage federal funds participation in this because this is private money that could be used as match for those programs. If you're using mitigation money, I think it'd be helpful to know that, or damage claim money or something from a settlement. That might be good to know as part of the description, but I don't see anything that would really disqualify any source of funding from this program. So it's one of the nice things about this is that this is from a conservation project perspective, pretty easy money to work with.
Yes, typically federal funding can be a limiting factor in other programs, but Acres for America does welcome federal funding as well, which is great.
Okay, we appear to be out of questions. If anybody has any other ones, this would be the time to share them. Otherwise, again, our emails are listed here. That's really the best way to get in contact with us. And if you have something that you really would need to discuss on the phone, maybe in your email suggest some times that would be workable for us to give you a call, or for us to set up a conference call to go over the specifics of your transaction. That is it for now. We are at a little over 40 minutes, and I really appreciate everybody who participated today. This is an exciting program. This is we're going into our 11th year of it here at NFWF, and this has been something that's something we're really proud of, and really are looking forward to a great slate of awards for 2015. So thank you, and have a wonderful day wherever you may be.